irresponsible? Are you being, as Casey Singh seems to suggest, being a little too cynical about it? Don't worry about the world. Geopolitics, geoeconomics, India is an economic superpower. Who's worried about what happens with a Modi documentary or tax rates on the BBC? Is that the line you're trying to take here today? We shouldn't be too worried about what the foreign media says about us.
But do you think the United States or Britain or anybody else are worried about what they're doing in Europe in trying to suppress access altogether to Russian media? None of the BBC or anybody else will bring on into the discussion anybody who would defend the Russian position, or not only that.
But does this does our sir, with due regard, does this affect our standing as a liberal democracy?
So hold on. Not only that, anybody who would talk about dialogue and diplomacy, they are not allowed to express their dissent in the media, whether it is written or a visual media.
Does this affect our standing as a liberal democracy?
No,
if within weeks of a documentary critical of the Prime Minister or the government of the Modi government during the Gujarat violence, the BBC is raided?
The point is that, do you think that these countries are worried about their own image when they do the kind of things they're doing in terms of actually violating their own values blatantly? Not only with regard to the media and so many other areas. Do you think they're worried? It's because we have this complex that somehow we have to be in the good books and be praised by these guys. These guys have no complex. They will do what they want. They will violate all their principles, as they are doing in so many fields.
Right.
Economic, security, cultural, religious, whatever have you. Best, of course. I don't think we should have that mindset.
So you're saying these countries are guilty of double standards. You're saying these countries are guilty of double standards.
Absolutely.
They have no reason to lecture us on democratic values. Farooq Dondi, you want to respond to that, what you're hearing? Or do you believe that India needs to, in a way, be conscious that one of our great advantages in the world is that we are perceived as a liberal democracy that allows a free press?
We should be perceived as a liberal democracy that allows a free press. If all these commentators are saying that there is no effect of the BBC documentary, that it's irrelevant, then why have they banned it? Why don't they take it apart, as in any liberal democracy one ought to do in the freedom of expression, and say this fact is wrong because, that fact is wrong because the BBC has made a mistake, or that the BBC has viciously libeled the Modi government.
But what if the BBC has committed tax irregularities? What if the BBC has committed tax irregularities?
Not ban it and raid the BBC for income tax purposes. I don't understand what income the BBC has, you know, apart from the fees that we pay the BBC as British citizens. What income tax business does the BBC have at all? And besides, don't confuse the BBC with the British government. They are separate organizations, and the BBC religiously maintains its independence. And the fact that Russia is not represented on the BBC is wrong. I have very often seen, almost most days when you report the Ukrainian war, you have somebody in Moscow saying what the Moscow public are thinking, what the Russians allow their public to see and don't allow them to see.
Come on.
The Russian,
come on, they banned RT, come on, they banned Sputnik, they banned all Russian media. The fact that Russia has not banned
they are not putting the Russian point of view, but they are reporting from Russia.
Okay, let me just stop, gentlemen, the two of you, for a final word from you, Casey Singh, because there will be those who will say, look, this is also an opportunity. You've already seen the Hindu Sena, you know, surround the BBC office today, that the BBC is anti-India. Do you think this pitch will work, that the BBC is anti-India? It has in the past never shown the map of Kashmir the way India wants to, has at times gone against the stated official position of the government of India. Will it work or not? A quick answer.
Rajdeep, didn't we see this documentary play out under Mrs. Gandhi? All this has been tried then, right up to the emergency. There was a similar kind of intolerance then, and what was the net result? She was shown the door once. So Indian public is very shrewd. They know what is the difference between India and the Indian government. They give a lot of leeway to the Indian government. But at the same time, they realize where the lines are crossed. They realize where personal interests of people, where touchiness on certain things, start impacting on India's image. Now, even the common man, if you ask him if he's on the street, he may not be aware of it. But sooner or later, if you keep doing it, they realize that government is being strong-armed and shouldn't be doing this, because basically we are a decent country. Basically, we are a decent lot of people who don't like to use those methods against us or against the others.
Okay.
And that is the selling point of India. And if we start diluting it and become a more right-wing, very assertive, intolerant government, then that image will take a while to damage India's overall image. But it's inevitable. For instance, I told you about The Economist. Now, in amongst the flawed democracies, US has also been put. It's not that they are just pillorying India. Even US post-Trump is seen as a flawed democracy. So therefore, it is not that they don't point a finger at themselves.
Okay.